What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Dave Show. Been a little bit, sorry about that, a little longer than a week, but that's kind of been the cadence lately, so I'm going to try and pick it up, but I say it in every video and I end up not doing it. But bear with me, please. Appreciate you guys that have been sticking along the whole time. And if you like this stuff, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends. You know, all that good stuff. I've done a lot of gear reviews and that kind of stuff so far, and today we're going to be doing something a little different, and I'd love to hear everyone's feedback on it and what you guys think. Today's going to be more of a kind of philosophy video and something to get everybody thinking a little bit. And I'm actually thinking of making this like a 4-part series, 3 to 4 parts, most likely, but I won't ramble too much. Anyways, I want to get into it. So today I want to start talking to you guys about emergency preparedness in the suburbs, because right now that's my context. I currently live in a heavily suburban area. Like the place I live, it's not even called the town, it's called the city. It's not like a heavy like major metropolitan city, but hopefully that paints a decent picture for you guys of the type of area that I'm in and that I'm preparing in. I am working on relocating, ideally out of New England, especially with this new assault weapons ban they're trying to pass in Rhode Island. Total bullshit, but regardless, I want to talk today about how to start preparing for emergencies, whether it be long-term, short-term, whatever, in the suburbs. And the focus of this video, like I said, this is probably going to be a 3 or 4 part series, but the focus of this video is going to be more the most likely situations that you're going to have to deal with, how you should prepare for that. And the great thing about this is that when you're preparing for these type of natural disasters, let's call it, or man-made disasters even, in terms of like an industrial accident or something like that, this is a great starting point to lay your foundation for preparing for more kind of grandiose and out there scenarios, I guess you could say, or the less likely things that we're all still trying to prepare for. At least I am, and I know a lot of people are trying to as well. So we'll get into it. I got my water in this video. I forgot it for the last one. It kind of threw me off a little bit, but we're rocking and rolling today, baby. Let's go. So yeah, we'll get right into it. So I wanted to just kind of have a brief discussion about the most likely scenarios that you as the average civilian living in the suburbs is bound to encounter that's outside of the norm. So the most obvious thing is going to be weather, natural disasters, that kind of stuff. Some of you, depending on where you live, some things apply where others don't, and vice versa. So if you live down south and you deal with hurricanes and stuff like that, this may look a little different for you, but a lot of the basics are the same. It's going to be the same thing if you live up north and you deal with big snowstorms and blizzards and stuff like that. But these are basically, I guess you would call, short-term disruptions of goods and services or your normal way of life, where things do eventually go back to normal. And it only affects a smaller type of area, be it county-wide, statewide, that kind of thing. So, as I said, the big ones, it's like hurricanes, wildfires, I guess earthquakes, any type of big storm, winter storms, you name it. So, like I said, these are temporary disruptions to service. This is you planning to get through a shorter term duration emergency, and then, you know, it's not like a total collapse of society or anything like that, which we will get to, but not today, not in this video. Like I said, we'll be going through this from most likely to least likely. So we're going to be discussing these temporary disruptions to the affected area, how to prepare for that, meaning what should you have on hand, what should you be thinking mentally and kind of have as a mindset when all this stuff occurs, and how to get through it. One thing we'll be touching on too is whether you should be sheltering in place, kind of bugging in, or if you should be leaving the area that you're in and bugging out to somewhere else that's safer. So obviously, like in a wildfire, right, you're not going to have a choice but to leave your house if you're in the direct path of the fire. So that's going to change kind of the thought process slightly, versus, let's say it's a blizzard and you get snowed. There's no way you're really going anywhere. You're going to have to kind of hunker down at your house, right? So I will address the hunkering down at your house, the bugging in type of stuff first, and then we'll move into the bugging out type of stuff after that. So I guess we're actually going to start with if you go on the FEMA website, the FEMA and the CDC both have recommendations for emergency preparedness on their website. I got the FEMA recommendations written down here, and then I'm going to add some other stuff that I think is pretty important to that as well. So first off on the FEMA list is going to be water. So with water, FEMA is recommending that you stockpile at least 1 gallon per person per day. That's bare minimum. I would recommend, and I've touched on this in other videos, ideally you're storing about 3 gallons per person per day of water. The way you're going to need it for sanitation, cooking, drinking, you name it. If you got pets, you're going to have to take water for them into consideration as well. There's a lot of things that can kind of play into this in terms of water. But like I said, FEMA's recommending 1 gallon per person per day. I'm going to say 3 gallons per person per day. So immediately after water, what FEMA recommends is a 3-day supply of food on hand. I think that's a good start, but I think that maybe that'd be your first goal, but then as soon as you hit that goal, I would shoot for at least a week, up to 3 weeks probably. If you look at some of the more recent natural disasters and stuff we've had, like if you look at Hurricane Helene that just happened, a lot of these people were stranded for a lot longer than 3 days with very little help. They were kind of isolated, stranded on the sides and tops of mountains with the roads washed out and things like that. So that's just a normal natural disaster that occurred. I mean, there were some weird things about that. This isn't the video to talk about that, but same thing, big blizzard, it could be a week or two if you really get dumped on with snow that you're kind of stuck in place, you name it. So I would recommend, like they say 3 days, FEMA says 3 days, I say at least a week, preferably up to 3 weeks of food or a month of food, and the appropriate amount of water to go along with that. So if we're talking a week's worth of water, figuring on 3 gallons per person per day, you should have 21 gallons of water on hand. The easiest way I would recommend this for you is to go to Tractor Supply, and they sell, well, you can just stock up on bottled water, stuff like that. That's easy. What I do, one of my water storage options is you go to Tractor Supply. I think it's like $20, and you can buy a 6-gallon water container. It looks just like a gas can, same type of spout and everything, but if you fill up, I would buy 4, honestly. So you spend about $100, you're going to get 4 6-gallon containers of water, and then that will give you 24 gallons of water. So I said for a week you should have 21 gallons based on 3 gallons a person a day, but if you fill up 4 of these 6-gallon containers, you're going to have a little extra, which is not a bad thing, and it doesn't take up that much room. And it can be kind of stored anywhere. I would store it inside in kind of like your basement or something like that, just to keep the temperature regulated, and you don't want it freezing and thawing. It can mess your cans up and all kinds of other stuff if you live in that kind of area, but you also don't want that shit boiling up hot in your garage if you live down south, something like that either. So something to think about for water. Food, I wouldn't necessarily, you can buy like a bunch of dry goods and stuff like that. That is going to suck your water supply up even faster. I recommend canned goods and things like that. If you are more worried about a winter type of storm, the good thing in that type of scenario is that if you were to lose power, let's say, you can just take all the food from your fridge, put it in a plastic tote, put it in a cooler, things like that, and just stick it outside. It's not going to spoil. It's below freezing out. If you're in a hotter environment and this type of stuff happens, I would look into, I don't know, buying like a big type of Yeti type of cooler or something like that. If you know this storm's coming, that's a good thing to do. You get a big cooler, get some solid ice blocks, like a 25-pound block of ice. It'll last about a week in my experience. But in this area, I think canned goods and snacks and that kind of stuff shines here, but also you're kind of going to fall back onto your dry goods as well. So we touch on food and water. The next thing that FEMA talks about having as part of their emergency preparedness recommendations is a NOAA radio. So they're talking about one of those, like, it's a hand crank, like you can buy them cheap on Amazon. They're all over the place. I don't know if I have one laying around down here at the moment. I'm not gonna like get up and look around for one, but they're cheap, and usually they have like a little solar charger. They have a hand crank that'll also charge it. They usually have a built-in flashlight, and it'll get like AM, FM, and weather bands on that radio. Just so obviously if you don't have power, internet, whatever, you can still kind of tune in on the radio and listen that way. I think that's a good starting point. I also think that you could look into something like, I'm going to segue from FEMA's recommendations into something else that's on my list, which would be some sort of alternative communication, like a ham radio. I don't have a ham radio, but I just started getting into the GMRS radios. I just picked up a 2-pack of those. I haven't done much with it yet, but that's one of my goals, is to, for the year, get better with the GMRS stuff. And the cool thing with GMRS is you don't have to take a test to get a license or anything. You can just pay the FCC, I think, a one-time fee of like, I don't know, go look it up on their website. I don't know the cost offhand, but you just have to pay to get a license, and then you can legally operate it if you care about that sort of thing. But I just bought a 2-pack of cheap Baofeng GMRS radios, and I'm going to start messing with that. But that's another great way to have alternative means of communication and information gathering after this type of event, especially if your cell towers go down because they get schwacked by a hurricane or whatever, a fire, you name it, things of that nature. There are some limitations to the handheld radios as well. Like if you're going to rely on repeaters and stuff, those could go down just like a cell tower could. But even just for some like enhanced line of sight type communications, those are good. Next thing FEMA recommends is going to be a flashlight. That's kind of a no-brainer. I would have flashlights, candles, and spare batteries on hand, or some power banks if you got rechargeable flashlights. This is a video too where you might want to be pausing and taking notes if you are just kind of starting to get into this and consider this. But a lot of this stuff's basics. Other people might know too, but this is just to keep everybody sharp, get everybody thinking, analyze your current plan if you have one, and see if there's any gaps based on the information that I'm saying. And like I said, if you're brand new to all this, this is a great starting point. So I would definitely kind of go through this video slow and take some notes on the things I'm talking about. So we touched on like flashlights, batteries, candles, that kind of stuff. Help you see at night. I recommend headlamps in terms of flashlights over just a standard handhelds, but that'll get you by in a pinch too if need be. But the headlamp's nice because you just slap it on. You can use both hands still. The next thing FEMA is going to recommend is first aid. So I've done a video on first aid kits if you're interested in checking that out. I put it up a few videos ago. I know everyone always says in their YouTube videos, I'll leave a link to it somewhere in here. I don't know how to do that shit. I got to figure it out, but I don't know how, so I'm not going to do it in this video. But I would have first aid supplies on hand, like your basic first aid kit. I would also have like some trauma stuff too, stop the bleed stuff. I'm not thinking you're going to get into a crazy gunfight or something, but people can fall, people can cut themselves, things of that nature, and that can get pretty nasty. So I would have first aid on hand, and then also that kind of segues into some other things I recommend that aren't necessarily on the FEMA list, but from first aid you should also be thinking of stocking up on I wouldn't necessarily call it like a comfort item, but you should think about stocking up on essential supplies that are bigger than first aid that you're going to rely on. So if you have any prescription medications that you rely on to keep you alive, or like if you have anxiety meds or anything like that, it may be a good idea to try and get a 90-day supply of that from your doctor instead of having to go back every couple weeks to a month, just to have extra on hand. Because the last thing you want in a stressful situation where you're probably not going to be getting help anytime soon from emergency responders, if you struggle with mental health issues, you're going to want to stay regulated as best as you can to get through that scenario the best way you can. But also if you're on blood pressure medication or you name it, you got asthma, definitely keep that stuff stockpiled, because you're still going to need it regardless of whether these essential goods or services are going. Other things to think of too, I'm going to kind of segue actually, and FEMA doesn't really talk about this in their basic list, but I'm going to highlight sanitation kind of in the same vein here. So you should have a plan on what to do with your trash. You should have a plan on how you're going to go to the bathroom and where you're going to get rid of your waste. My recommendation for that would be you can go to Walmart and you can buy, it's a bucket kit. It's like a bucket that comes with a toilet seat, and they have these special bags that you do your business in, and then you can kind of zip it up and keep it sealed. I'd recommend keeping a thing of like contractor bags on hand, so all your regular trash you can throw in there, all your excrement that you've put in your poop bag from Walmart you can then throw in that bag, and then just go throw it in the back corner of your yard. Again, this is a temporary scenario, so you're not worried about the long-term implications of all that trash piling up at your house. But trash bags, things like baby wipes, toilet paper, paper towels. If you can, stock a little bit of disposable like cups, plates, plastic silverware. That way you're not using your water supply as much to wash your silverware. After you use it, you can just throw it away every meal. The other thing too to think about, if you have any women in your life, make sure you've got some tampons and stuff like that stocked up as well. Again, all based on like sanitation and comfort. Just trying to get through a shitty scenario. It's temporary, but you want to have the basics on hand that you can't just run and get from the store when you need them. Moving on from there, FEMA suggests you have a whistle for signaling, trying to get a hold of emergency first responders. I think that's a great idea. I also think on top of just a whistle for signaling, you could look into getting some little signaling mirrors or something like that if you wanted to. Flare guns, road flares, that kind of stuff. Even just the ability to light a fire for signaling. Let's say you're isolated, like a Hurricane Helene type of situation, and you see a chopper overhead or something, you want to be able to let them know, hey, I'm down here, I need help. So I would definitely recommend, in addition to a whistle, some other signaling devices as well. The next thing they recommend is a dust mask. Now, I think a dust mask is fine, but if remember in this video, we're talking for both man-made and natural disasters. So if you were in a situation like the East Palestine, Ohio thing, where that train car with all the chemicals on it got blown up by the feds and rained down upon the town. If it were me, I would want a gas mask. So that's for you as well as everyone else in your household. I think that's going to do a lot more for you than a dust mask will in those situations. But a dust mask is still good to have too, I guess. But for those type of more man-made disasters that we're talking here, I think a gas mask is a good idea with some extra filters and stuff like that. And that's an area I'm lacking too. So keep in mind, I'm also, yes, I'm making these videos and I'm making my recommendations, but another goal of this channel is for us to all kind of grow and develop together. And I'm not going to tell you things that, I'm not going to pretend I'm perfect. I'm not going to pretend that I have all this stuff on hand and figured out, but this is my list of things like that I have, things that I'm looking to add to my stuff, but this is all just how we grow together through these videos. So yeah, I'd recommend a gas mask. And then what's interesting is the next thing on the FEMA list is actually rolls of sheet plastic and duct tape for your windows. So this will apply to both man-made and natural disasters. If you really need to seal yourself inside your house, you should have duct tape and plastic on hand to tape around all your windows and doors to try and create as much of an air envelope as you can. And that'll help. And your house isn't going to be airtight enough, generally speaking, where you're going to run out of oxygen because you've sealed your windows and doors. Houses are meant to breathe. That's how they don't get moldy and things like that. The newer houses are a lot tighter, so you may want to think about that a little more. If you live in a newer house that's better insulated, has a better vapor barrier around the outside, things of that nature. But overall, I'd say in general, you'll be fine just taping yourself inside the house like that. That kind of goes with the dust mask thing too. But the other thing that the sheet plastic and duct tape is good for is if you lose power, say it's a winter storm, you're going to want to... Air is a great insulator. So by sealing off your doors and windows, you're going to create a little more of an air barrier there, and it's going to prevent draft. And so that'll actually help keep ambient temperature a little higher in your house compared to the outside in those type of scenarios. Excuse me. And that kind of segues into something else I have on my list that they don't have on theirs, which is about thermal regulation. So, if this applies to you and you're in a colder environment, then you need to have things like portable heaters. If you have a wood stove or something, that's great. But you should have extra sleeping bags, wool blankets. You can look into the little propane buddy heaters, things of that nature. Just kind of have a plan. If you don't have a backup heater, what I would recommend is, again, you find the smallest room of your house, you seal off the doors and windows, and then you try and create a micro environment inside of that smallest room. So make a blanket for it, make whatever you want to do to get everyone as tight together as possible, and just layer blankets and everything else. Try and stay as warm as you can in the smallest area possible of your home. Thermal regulation would be less important because you're not going to freeze to death in a warmer environment, but if you live somewhere that it's hot and it gets cold at night, same thought process applies. And also, if you live somewhere that's really hot, you don't want to swelter and stuff in your house. So, maybe even just some handheld fans, stuff like that, stuff to try and keep a little bit cool, will go a long way. The only other things that FEMA has listed on their list is a can opener. Most people have a can opener already, but again, if you have your food canned goods stocked up, you're going to need a way to get into it and eat it. So a can opener, kind of a no-brainer. And then they recommend you have your cell phone. It might work, it might not, but everyone already has a cell phone pretty much. So I don't even know why you would put that on a list, but it is what it is. I'm going to touch on a couple other things that I don't think that they really touch on that great in their list. So I think it's important in these type of scenarios as well to have some cash on hand, at least a few $100s. If power's out and you need stuff, this happens all the time in natural disasters. Cash is king. So keep that in mind as well. Most people only have debit cards these days, or Apple Pay and all that kind of stuff, but if the power's out, none of that shit's going to work. So it's a good idea to have some cash. Another thing that's something to keep in mind is a lot of people have fire safes so that they keep all their important documents in, birth certificates, social security cards, stuff of that nature. I would keep that all in one place. If it's in a fire safe, that's great, but those are heavy. If you were having to move with it. So just maybe have that in a folder or something that you can quickly grab. And the other thing I would recommend is having a family photo printed out, not just on your cell phone or something, but an actual hard copy family photo for every member of your household. That way, if you're separated and you might not have a lot of other stuff to say, hey, like I'm looking for my daughter and my wife or whatever, your kids, your friends, you name it. If you have a hard photo, you can say, hey, these are the people I'm looking for. Have you seen them? And it's also going to be, believe it or not, proof, like to, like, say, a federal agent or something, or anybody in a disaster relief scenario, that, hey, that's actually my kid. See, here's the picture of us together. So I think that's great to have on hand, your personal documents, and then, again, one per member of family photo to prove that you guys all belong together. Another thing I briefly kind of touched on when I was talking about water, but not really fully, is pet considerations. So a lot of us have dogs, a lot of us have cats. You might have like a gerbil, whatever, man. Make sure you have a little bit of their food stocked up as well, so they're not digging into your stockpile. And also, when we touched on water, if you have pets, maybe put a little water up extra for them too. And that'll help your morale. You don't want to see your pet suffering. It's just going to make the situation worse for you. So, besides that, there are a couple other things that I think are important in these type of scenarios. That's going to be personal protection. So whether that be firearms, a baseball bat, a katana, whatever you got, pry bar, just have something that you can protect yourself a little bit, because one thing you do see after a lot of these natural disasters is looting and stuff like that. You see it on the news all the time. Like, I remember back when the Katrina stuff was all over the news a lot, there was a huge deal about looters, and now, like, everyone has the "you loot, we shoot" signs. You guys see that all the time, so that's definitely a consideration to keep in mind, how to protect yourself, how to protect your stuff, your family, from people that are trying to capitalize on the opportunity in front of them in terms of a temporary lack of rule of law in these locations. The only other thing I would really touch on in terms of tangible things is going to be comfort items. So if you have kids, I mean, if you're staying at your house, you should have all their toys and all that stuff, and books and whatever. But just something to touch on, kind of think of like, hey, what can we do to occupy ourselves when the power is out and we're sitting at home and bored? Card games, board games, puzzles, whatever. And then the only other two things I'm going to touch on is going to be, one, your mindset. So if you're preparing for this type of stuff, obviously you already kind of have this mindset to an extent, but you should prepare yourself mentally to deal with hard times. And that's not necessarily just in these type of scenarios. I think it's in general. I think a lot of people are soft today, and I heard it's interesting, right? Because a lot of people go through varied degrees of hardship throughout their lives. But one thing I saw, I don't know what podcast it was on, but they were talking about how the worst day of your life is still the worst day of your life. So, like, the worst day of your life could be, like, you name it, you live in the third world and you're worried about some tribe coming to chop your dad's head off because they don't like him or something like that, and like you see some nasty stuff, right? Or you could be very wealthy, live in a first world nation, and the worst day of your life is you actually have to change a tire in your own fancy suit and you ruin it, regardless, if you try and prepare yourself mentally with the expectation of kind of like, hey, I know this is going to suck and I'm just going to deal with it and I'm going to be stronger, or I'm at least going to get through to the other side of these things because I've already prepared myself mentally. That's just something to think about, and that's going to kind of be an overarching theme through all these videos I'm doing. The next few videos in this series, at least, is going to be trying to build some mental resiliency, have an adaptive mindset, that kind of stuff. Another thing I'll touch on is fitness. So you want to have your mental fitness, like I was touching on, but also physical fitness. If you have to carry a family member that's unconscious or something like that, run a distance with your kid, anything of that nature, you should be thinking about being in shape enough to do that, especially as like a man. If you're a provider for or a protector for others, you should take that seriously and get yourself fit and strong. The last thing I'll touch on is community. So again, that's going to go through all these videos too. Like I said, this is a good starting point for preparedness for all the situations we're going to discuss currently and moving forward. But you know, I'm not saying you have to have this like tactical cool guy group that you shoot with every weekend and run battle drills with and stuff like that. But if you're living in a settled suburban area, I'm not saying you've even got to be friends with them, but you should know your neighbors. You should know them on a first name basis, and you should be willing and able to help them out so that they'll be willing and able to help you out. And that could be in terms of this disaster happens and they need extra food or water, and they, you know, just things like that. It's good to know people that you know are decent people that live in your immediate area so that you can rely on each other when all else fails, because those are going to be the only people you have to rely on. So whatever that looks like for you, whether that just be knowing your neighbors on a first name basis, whether that be like hanging out with them and having a barbecue one weekend or something just to kind of get some rapport with them, so that you guys can have each other's back in any type of scenario. It's a good thing. This video is going kind of long, so I apologize, but that's kind of your bugging in situation in these scenarios. For natural and man-made disasters that you're going to want to stay put in your house for. On the flip side of that, if you are dealing with something like a wildfire or a hurricane or whatever, and you think the best option for you is going to be to immediately get up and get out, depending on where you're going, I wouldn't say go have it be too far away, because obviously you see on the news and stuff too. Like, I don't live in an area that's affected by hurricanes or wildfires, but you see it on the news all the time. These things are coming and everyone's trying to get out all at once, and the roads get clogged up, the highways get clogged up, everyone's just gridlocked in their cars. So I would say, if possible, like if you see there's a storm coming in and you're like, okay, it's going to whack my direct area, I think it's best for me to get out of here. Do it before the storm gets there and not right before. Try and put as much time and space between you and when that thing happens as possible. And that could be as simple, honestly, as like, okay, I got an aunt that lives 2 states away. I'm going to go stay with her for the weekend. Or, okay, this part of my state's going to get nailed. The other part of my state's not. Maybe we just go get a hotel room for a day or two. You know, whatever it may be. So keep that in mind, and then also keep in mind that if you are going to be displacing, you're going to be limited on the amount of things like food and water and everything else that you can take with you. So all of these touch points still apply to this bug out scenario, but you need to be thinking of how I'm going to transport them. So you throw your canned goods in bins, throw them in the back of your truck or car with your water supply and things like that. That may be a good way to go. If you're going to a friend or relative's house that's a little ways away, or if you're going somewhere like to stay in a hotel room, yeah, maybe you don't need to bring all your shit with you, because you know that you'll be able to stay there and live normally while your area that you normally live in is getting schwacked by a natural disaster or whatever. So when it comes to staying versus going, that use your judgment, obviously, and keep in mind that if you are going to go, the earlier that you go, it's the better off you're going to be. But again, if you are going to leave, you should have a lot of these important things I touched on, especially if you don't know where you're going. Like if you're just going to take off to get out of the way of this disaster and you don't know where you're going, okay, now you definitely want to have like some sort of backpack, I would say, for every member of your family, with their essential items in it and comfort items and everything else we touched on. And obviously you're going to try and do it not on foot, but keep in mind that weird shit happens and you may have to walk on foot to wherever you're going. So if you are going to take off, have good shoes, appropriate clothing, you name it, for walking an extended period of time. So another good thing is, I don't know if I touched on this or not, but maps, paper maps of your area. For any of these scenarios, maps are going to be a big, and know how to read your map too. But yeah, so if you're bugging out, those are things to consider. You should also consider keeping your vehicle topped off, regardless if you're staying or going, because you can use your vehicle for heat. You can use your vehicle to act as a charger for your electronic devices if you're staying put. But if you're going, you want to have a full topped off tank of gas. Make sure you're up on your vehicle maintenance, all that kind of stuff as well, to get you from where you're at to where you need to be. That's pretty much it. So I hope this video doesn't come off as 35 minutes of me just rambling, even though that's kind of what it is. But I just wanted to kind of go over a checklist for you guys to develop that I work off as well. Even if you can't check the boxes all right away, come up with what your priorities are, go after those first, and then move down the list from there. All this FEMA recommended stuff, you can just simply Google FEMA disaster preparedness list, and it'll take you right to their website, and you can see all that. Like I said, I did add things to supplement to that I think are important as well. And if you take all this in, prepare, get all that stuff squared away, you're going to be as ready as you can be to handle these type of disaster scenarios where you live. And this doesn't just apply to the suburbs, especially in these natural disaster type scenarios. I'd say it kind of applies way more broadly than that, at least in this phase of the discussion. But as we move into the kind of more less likely, but in my opinion, the next video we're going to discuss is decently high likelihood of potentially happening, regionalized at least. This information is going to help you out no matter where you live. But since I do live in the suburbs, that's kind of the focus target audience, and what my plans are, at least, being that I live here and it's my context. So that's what I got for you guys. If you guys think I missed anything, I would love it if you'd leave a comment down below. It can help me plan, it can help everyone else plan. It helps us grow. Like I said, I know I keep hitting on that, but that's a big part of this channel. So excuse me. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if I missed anything. Let me know if there's any type of videos that you guys would like to see that I haven't been putting out. Let me know your thoughts on these more kind of philosophical conversations versus just the gear reviews, because I do really enjoy the gear reviews, and I'm going to continue to try and keep getting new stuff and trying new stuff, both for my own personal uses, but also as kind of educational content or review content for you guys to consume as well. But I'm not made of money, and I don't have all the great gear in the world. So moving forward, I am trying to work these type of conversations into the mix as well. And I hope that you guys still find value from it and stick around for the journey. So that's pretty much all I have. If you need anything else from me, just leave a comment, and I'll get back to you. And besides that, thanks for watching The Dave Show. I'll see you guys in part 2 of this series. I may drop a video in between this one and the part 2 video. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how the feedback on this video is, and we'll go from there. So thanks, guys. I'll see you later.